Welcome, friends, to a very special streaming session. You will have to tell me how loud the music is, since there is not. No, I'm just gonna turn it down a notch. Just okay, maybe like that. I think that might be fine. I'm StefaNonsense, geek culture analyst, occasionally extraordinaire, and on today's stream, we're doing something special. We'll be doing something very exciting for an audience of myself and probably one or two more. What I'll be doing is I'll be we'll be analyzing the audience survey data I got from the audience survey I posted at the beginning of January. Now, for a quick update, just in case you're new here relatively, at the beginning of January, I posted a fluffy robe nonsense cast in which I was telling you that I'm gonna take a break January from uploading, which I have kinda. That video and the one about Station 11 notwithstanding. Hi, Michal. And I was also that was also when I told you and I asked you to fill an audience survey for me, because I've been generally, as it happens at the end of the year, of the calendar year, you tend to look back and think about stuff. And I had taken a trip. I had taken a 5-day trip, and I was away from my computer. Period. And that kind of made me think about some stuff, and I was slowly coming to the realization that I need to change something relating to the channel. Well, not necessarily to the channel, but what I do on the channel. So I was that kind of spurred on my idea of doing another audience survey. I did another one of these, I think, in 2019. And back then I got a whopping 12 respondents, which was nice, which was pretty nice. I think I had 2,000 subscribers back then. Now I have 3. So lucky to say that this time I have a whopping 29 respondents, which, if you look at the number of subscribers, is incredibly small. However, when I look at the numbers of returning viewers, which is a different sort of analytic you have access when you look in the YouTube channel analytics, 30 answers is pretty damn good. It's a very good cross section of those people who watch the people who will watch video after video, more or less. So those were the people I was interested in gauging their opinions on the channel, and I also, and generally, to find out some stuff about what you think about the channel and that sort of stuff. So I don't know if we're gonna get to any gaming this session. Just so you know, it's gonna be fairly it's gonna be really interesting if you're into data analysis and pie charts, which oddly enough I am. Like, considering my focus on city builders and strategy games, you should get the idea that I like to look at data and balancing spreadsheets. That's what I call city builders in general. It's basically balancing spreadsheets. So let's get to the scene. Oh, there we go. You're gonna get a bit of a preview. Oh, not preview. You're gonna get to look at my desktop for a bit. So as you can see, 29 responses right here, and I need to stop accepting responses. I thought I would do that earlier, but no. So I'm glad you like data or data. I say data, but some people say data. Michal. I like dates as well. I'm a big fan of dates, the fruit. So we began as you would think, like I would assume everyone who would fill out the survey would be a subscriber. However, there was one person who wasn't, and whoever that person is, maybe they became a subscriber after they filled this out. I don't know, but I'd like to thank them for taking the time and filling out a survey for a channel that they're not subscribed to. That shows a level of a different sort of level of commitment that I appreciate. Obviously, I want to thank everyone else who also took the time and filled out this survey. Because some of the data is really is very interesting, at least for me as a creator. So yes, we have 29 respondents. This nice pie chart. By the way, Google Forms. Google Forms is free to use. There's a separate thing called Google Surveys. That shit ain't free. This is free, and it's really nice. It does all of this data crunching. Well, not data crunching, illustrating, and you can also see the various surveys independently. So 29 respondents. One of them not a subscriber, but we got past that. Next question was, which video format do you prefer? And this is kind of important. I mean, obviously this is important because this is meant to help me gauge which types of media, which types of format the people who answered this prefer. And we have 26. I allowed for several. The same person, you could have answered several of these, like ticked several of the boxes, because just offering one option is weird. I also had we'll get to that. So 26 people said they prefer reviews. Fair enough. That is the main sort of the general main format that I do here. But you see, within reviews there are subgenres, and I do have several subgenres. One of those being the deep dive. And in that question I said like the Fallout New Vegas videos, which could have been more detailed, I'm sure, but they're pretty detailed for what I wanted to do. They're a deep dive in both the game as well as the narrative and story. So that's what I meant. And I have 21 people, so a fairly large majority enjoying the deep dives, which again, it's a type of a review, but a deeper take on the review. Then we get the next runners up are or with 9 votes, but from 9 to 21, that's a gigantic difference. So from this data, I gather that most of you really like deep dives, basically, which is and reviews in general, but deep dives especially, and that's very important for later on. Then with 9 votes each, podcasts, which is the Nonsense Cast, and the upcoming Talking Nonsense, which I started planning last year, but due to a variety of things, I just didn't get to do it. Talking Nonsense, I want it to be a podcast general about games and gaming, and in which I might also occasionally have interviews with indie devs. Well, I haven't gotten around to arranging or making or shooting anything yet, but the Nonsense Casts are a thing that I've done for several years. And the last one, the latest one, being the Station 11 one, which, by the way, that show. Ooh. Okay, the next one is streams, which we talk about more later on in the survey, and some list videos, which is fair enough. List videos tend to generally, it said that they do good on the platform on YouTube. Mine have been more hit and miss, but at the beginning of each year, starting with 2020, I started making 2 lists of upcoming CRPGs and city builders for that year. So those tend to be the only list videos I make in general. I have made some others in the past. Some of them did well and are still doing. Some of them almost no one has seen them. So there is that. As for the other ones, shorts, I get it. Not a lot of people are into shorts. I kind of enjoy them, but that's why I mainly moved them to my shorts channel, which, by the way, it's a separate thing. I will occasionally post some shorts. If I think they're really good, I'll post them on the main channel, but generally they'll go to the shorts channel or my most recently started TikTok, which is just going to be populated with my shorts. Then we have tips and tricks tutorial videos, which granted, this isn't what I do on the channel, so fair enough. And yeah, streams and stream highlights. So basically deep dives for the win, more or less, and with the occasional podcast and stream with something like keep it diversified, not diversified, spice it up, but mostly deep dives. Hey Alma, good morning. Now this was a great question. I'm patting myself on the back. This was a great question. I thought that really illustrated something for me. So it's basically, which type of gaming content do you associate most with my channel? City Builder and CRPG reviews each got 12, which fair enough. That's been mostly what I do for the past several years. Deep dive videos got 10, which is really interesting, and I'm glad that's so high. Is It a Classic, on the other hand, got 22 responses out of the 29. Hey ROP. So what this tells me is that it's possible that all of these 22 respondents, well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, either can you see? I don't know. Either A, enjoy Is It a Classic, and or B, actually found my channel because of Is It a Classic, which is quite massive. Both of those things, it's quite a massive sort of, it's of great importance to me and to my to the channel and to me, as as a hint, as a direction, to where to go to in this year and forward. So yeah, this was one of those data points that I found. I did not expect this. Sorry about that. I had no. I just put this in here because I was curious in general, but I did not expect Is It a Classic to basically be twice as more people vote for it than the follow-up. Hey Randolph. I don't know, man. I used to watch those, but granted, it depends on the show. Because the really one long one I watched was Yu Yu Hakusho, but that one that only has 112 episodes, so there's not that much filler in it. The beginning could be considered a filler, but it's very nice. It's very good, very long setup for the sagas afterwards. So, thing is It a Classic? It seems to be, from this audience, from this data, seems to be very important, at the very least for my brand image, let's call it. Which type of gaming content would you like to see more of on the channel? The most of it is CRPG reviews, which is good because I love RPGs. Next one is deep dive videos again. Then we get Is It a Classic in top 3 this time again. And the other one is city builder reviews. Also, I have to mention that videos about mods got 2, and there is, it's good to offer people options. So yeah, again, we're going back. Deep dive videos is deep dive, and Is It a Classic is in the top 2, top 3 again. which again, super important. This one had a fill your own option thing, and someone said both tips and tricks and is it a classic are ones I like, but you do great reviews too. So someone who mentions also is it a classic in the separate votes, so that's cool. Which game genres would you like to see more on my channel, which is different than the type of content per se. City Builders only 11, which is fair enough. It's under half of totals. Again, CRPGs is a clear number 2. Turn-based tactics games is 22. Then this one had an other, like fill your own thing, and the other one has expand repertoire, which fair enough could mean other shit. Or if it's interesting enough, I don't mind what type you cover, just not sports games. Yeah, sports games never. Yeah, sports games, car games, most likely never. Maybe some car games at a certain point. But that's more related to what's coming up in the future. But thing is here, turn-based tactics games, 22 people. So if we're talking about games in general that are turn-based, that's great, because that's mostly what I play, at least, and cover at least when it comes to RPGs. City Builders, I can see how those aren't turn-based per se. Now, if we're talking about pure turn-based tactics, like Battle Sector, for instance, those are a bit more difficult to approach. Why? They require way more time investment for me to get a sense of how the game works than, say, a City Builder, which sounds odd because City Builders are could be more complex, but I tend to get a fairly good sense of how a City Builder is gonna work out towards the end game, as opposed to a turn-based tactics game. Now, Battle Sector was a not an anomaly, but a bit of an exception, because first of all, I like Warhammer 40k, and that game is so goddamn good. It is easy to get into, it's simple to understand the mechanics, and it shit works properly, basically. Like there's no real hidden mechanics, there's nothing a lot that you don't have to keep track of. You have to keep track of the right amount of things so as to make it tactically challenging but not overwhelming, which is a crucial point here. But now, if we're talking about turn-based tactics games in the sense of 4Xs, those take up even more time. Those require even more time for me to get a clear sense of what it is that the game has to offer and how it works. Because I used to cover 4Xs to a certain degree. And whilst I enjoy doing them, because I do enjoy 4Xs, due to the time commitment that they require, it never really allowed me to properly enjoy them. Because I also wanted to have videos out, and it created this situation in which I was playing the games just to get them, just to make content about them, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just didn't have enough time to dive into them as deep as I would have wanted to. And likewise, when I looked at my analytics, the amount of watch time, we're just gonna take watch time as very important. The amount of watch time that they generated was below that of City Builders and RPGs. And that's when I decided a couple of years ago to focus mostly on City Builders and RPGs and just do away with 4Xs. Even though Shadow Empire, I would still love to have the time to invest and learn how the fucking logistics mechanics work in that thing. I think that game is fascinating, but on the other hand, I think city builders are really cool as well, and I can play way more city builders in the same time and enjoy them in the same time that I would play Shadow Empire. That's more of a choice on my side of things. But it's good to know. Rest assured, most of the gaming review deep dive content that will be on the channel will be turn-based, but most likely is not gonna be all tactics games. Probably gonna be a fuck ton of RPGs, although a certain amount of tactics games as well, because a lot of turn-based tactics games nowadays have a lot of RPG elements in them. In fact, the upcoming video on upcoming computer RPGs is filled with turn-based tactics RPGs. So this was a question. This is an interesting question. Which types of games do you prefer when I cover them? New games got 16 votes, and already established titles got 13 votes. Fun fact: up until I had 26 responses, this was 50-50, which goes back to a problem I had with even numbers back in the first survey, when I had 12 respondents and something was 50-50. Well, this one isn't. It's 13 to 16 in favor of new games, which is good to know. However, we're gonna get back to this, because the next question is, well, not this next one. This next one is separate from everything else. It's whether or not I should make reviews about movies and TV shows. Fuck no is 11. Fuck yeah is 18. Occasionally I'll still do some, just because that's how I started. And if it weren't for YouTube's shitty copyright robots, I would still probably be doing that. But yeah, they're most likely gonna be nonsense casts, unless I finally get that. At a certain point, I might also experiment with some, because they've worked on that technology. They've worked on the shitty robots. I might try some more produced stuff with actual movies and make an actual review, but those aren't a priority. But this is just for me to know. Now, this question is: are you interested in me talking about my gaming history, i.e. covering things from outside my usual genres and platform, like my videos about 90s arcade games and Total Overdose? I really enjoyed playing Total Overdose, and I don't think a lot of people have actually seen my video on 90s arcade games, but it is what it is. Not a lot of interest, is just 5 people who are not interested, whilst 24 people are interested in me going back and looking through my gaming history. And this is something that I'll get back to. This is something that doesn't really gel with me playing indies. New indies at the very least. But that's just that sometimes you get these types of sort of contradicting information in surveys, but I built this so that I would know where some of the questions are more important for me, basically, than others. How often would you like to see me post? And 14 of you said once per week. Look, I'd love to be able to post once per week. However, that is not physically or mentally possible for the type of stuff that I've been making lately. So especially a deep dive. A week is nowhere near enough for a deep dive. A week is barely enough for a decent review. Because in general, how I review games is I need to play at least 10 hours. That's how I gauge them. In 10 hours of play, considering I'm playing city builders, tactical strategy games, and RPGs, 10 hours should show me most, if not all, of the game mechanics that the game has to offer, even if it doesn't show me the entire story. So that on the at the onset, that's 10 hours, and when I was younger, that could happen in a day. Nowadays, not so much. I got shit to do, so I can't really rock 10 hours of a day and just playing one thing. So that has to be separated into several days. And then there's writing the actual review script. Then I normally let that like marinate for a day or two. Generally I can do a slight rewrite after that, here and there. Maybe I get ideas, maybe I get a joke here and there that I need to write. Then there's shooting, then there's editing. So all of this could technically be done in a week, but I've done this before. I've done weekly uploads before, and it's really stressful, and I'm never really super satisfied. I am satisfied with the product, but it could always be a little bit better discussed if I would have given it more time. So alas, once per week is really not gonna happen, except for the month of February, but we'll get to that later. Once every 2 weeks, yes, once every 2 weeks is something that I've been trying to do, that I've tried to do. It's a bit more doable, it's a bit more relaxed, it gives me more time to work on stuff. Then there is the once per month, which is interesting. That's a very interesting proposal. However, knowing how the YouTube AI works, and considering the size of my channel, that's not gonna really work very well, considering I want to grow the channel. Once per month, I could change to once per month once the channel is so large that it just generates a lot of watch time anyway, and I have a lot of people that watch my videos when I post them. We're not there yet. So once per month, unless something else happens that occupies my time. Now I'm gonna try to do like once every 2 or 3 weeks. Then there's whenever you want. I know that's nice. That's a nice thought, but I also like to keep a schedule for my own mental well-being. As long as it takes a video to get its full quality, that's fair enough. Although it's arguable, full quality. At a certain point in any creative process, one of the most important skills you can learn, and you should learn, is to say, this is good enough, let's ship it. The song starts again. This is good enough, let's ship it, and let's move to the next thing. So that's something that perfectionism is the enemy of the good enough in this case. So that's not the best approach for most people. Although I don't have that problem, because can't nail down a time frame. Sometimes multiple times a week, sometimes only once. I like going back to my friends' videos to watch. Well, good news for you, friend, is that I have close to 300 videos. So there's always, granted, the really old ones have not great audio, but my writing has been fairly consistent, so it's still in my voice. Although slightly different, but yeah. Once every 2 weeks or whatever, it's isn't too stressful, fair enough. And whenever, man, I appreciate it, bro. So that's why, that's the discussion. But more on the schedule after we're done with the survey data. So since I did a fair bit of streaming the past couple of years, I wanted to know how many people were actually aware that I stream on Twitch rather regularly, and 12 of you weren't. 17 of you were, which is really interesting. I try to make myself very available on both on the community tab, the YouTube community tab, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. But there are people who don't use any of those things, and they're not aware of the YouTube community tab, that they can touch it and there's stuff there, and if it whenever it appears in their YouTube feed, they probably never really pay attention to it. But yeah, this was interesting to this was also interesting to find out. Do you generally watch streams? The majority of you do not, which fair enough, I understand, but a decent quantity do. And this question was for those of you who generally watch streams. You prefer gaming sessions, fair enough, as opposed to question and answer, or just me talking to the camera about some subject. Fair enough. This was just again, this was for me to gauge the potential interest in some other streaming formats. For those of you who generally watch streams, which platform do you prefer? YouTube got 14 votes to Twitch's 9, which really made me think, because Twitch has Twitch takes, like, when it comes just talking finances, Twitch takes 50% of what supporters pay for, subscription tiers and stuff like that. YouTube, on the other hand, only takes 30% or 33% from the subscription, from their subscription thingy, their paid subscription thingy, when you become super fans and shit like that, not when you subscribe to it in general. YouTube does take, I'm gonna say, 45% of ad revenue, I think, but that's neither here nor there. So finances wise, technically speaking, YouTube would be more useful. However, I stopped streaming on YouTube because it is assumed, it is speculated that maintaining long videos that don't really get watched, such as streaming recordings, on your channel could impact your channel's general relevancy and the number of impressions you get, because the quick math to that is, there's a difference if someone watches 2 minutes from a 10-minute video as opposed to watching 2 minutes from a 2-hour video. Those percentages definitely go into the insane YouTube algorithm, and it is thought, again speculated, we don't know this for sure, that might affect your channel standing. So I stopped doing that, and that's why I moved on to Twitch. However, in the meanwhile, I started a separate YouTube channel just for my streams, and where I will upload this entire stream as well. So if you're interested in streams, in my streams, that channel will hold all of my streams. And I've also started thinking about doing more streams on YouTube, just because of Twitch's policies in general, shitty policies. Not as if YouTube has better policies, are objectively better, but yeah, this is where the financial potential comes into play. So yeah, and this is also why I'm doing this, been doing this on YouTube. Yay. On the other hand, I was talking about the audience survey for the YouTube channel, so it wouldn't have made a lot of sense to post it on Twitch. And I also thought, in surveys, when at the end there's like, hey, would you like feedback or some shit, that I did that as well, because I was curious. So I was asking, you have some other type of feedback for me, suggestions for future videos, content, anything that's channel related. I got a Happy New Year. Thank you. Happy New Year to you too. Granted, this was at the beginning of January, so keep that in mind. Someone says, I love the New Vegas and Dune content. Fair enough. So I'd say keep going in that direction and continue with This Is the Classic. Is the Classic makes another showing. What about making an Is It a Classic for movie TV shows? No. It's generally not a good idea for any sort of creator or service provider to say no to a potential customer, but no, there is a shit ton of other channels out there who do this sort of thing and who just talk about movies, and they have gazillions of subscribers. And I know this directly, that whenever I did something about movies, it was really hard. It was not impossible. It's like if I were to make a video about some popular mainstream game now, the video gets buried. And the same thing with this sort of stuff. Also, when it comes to movies and TV shows, there is a classic era. There's literally a classic era, which basically starts at the beginning of more or less commercial cinema and ends somewhere in the 60s, kind of like that. So technically speaking, there is a classic era of movie making, if you want to go into that. But why the reason I talk about games and ask whether games are a classic is because video games are a considerably younger medium than movies, obviously. Although you can track video games back to the maybe 50s. I think Tennis for Two was maybe in the 50s or 60s, but I'm just talking like commercial stuff. So it's a much younger medium, and we don't yet have a clear demarcation line, like something that is more or less, let's say, from the outside, imposed from the outside, or something that had time to gel over time. And also, thanks to how quickly the medium evolved, thanks to technology developing so fast, it also creates really gigantic differences between decades, certainly, but also in like shorter timelines, in like shorter time scopes. Even within 5 years, there can be big differences in games and what they have to offer, how they look, how they sound, stuff like that. So I find it much more interesting to discuss whether or not a title is a classic according to my very limited list of requirements, because that's why I mentioned them in each video. Those tend to be the things that are most generally associated with a classic when someone says something is a classic. But that's why I also talk about subjective classics, not just objective ones, because again, and this is valid for movies as well. There's some movies that I consider classics for me because I grew up with them, but not a lot of people would give them the same sort of importance. And there's classic movies which I'm not a big fan of because they're really long and slow. So again, I find it way more interesting to talk about video games and whether or not something is a classic or not. Again, according to my list of requirements. Next one. You're doing real good for your channel and I enjoy almost everything you put out that is video games related. Even if I don't comment, I do watch your stuff. I would love to see you do even more retro games because I love retro gaming, and that's how I found your channel, the Septerra Core video, which is an Is It a Classic. Great for finding hidden gems and getting another opinion on a game I might know. I do like your newer stuff too, like the Frostpunk video was great and I have been hooked on that game in part of that video. Yeah. But I'm a retro head, so that is what I would love to see. Ultimately, I do what I do, but this is how you feel. I get you, Alma. Yes, is it a classic? So Septeracor is an is it a classic video, and again, is it a classic shows up again. Keep doing it, man. Cheers and best wishes in 2022. Let's hope it's less shitty than the previous 2 years. Do more retro games, classic games, in-depth look on those nostalgia trips. We're getting another one for basically is it a classic or retro stuff. It would be cool if you focus on turn-based tactics. Not many channels do. I sort of covered this earlier when I was talking about the turn-based tactics thing. Rest assured, most of the stuff I play is turn-based. Maybe not necessarily turn-based tactics, generally turn-based RPGs, but there are some turn-based tactics games that I am super interested in coming up this year, indies, and I'll definitely check some of those out. So that was a run through the audience survey. And like I said, a lot of very interesting information for me. Okay, let me move on to the solo camera. Beep. Hey, there I go. Larger me. Okay, so with that in mind, I'd like to thank everyone who filled out the survey yet again. Thank you very much. You have no idea how much you helped. Actually, you're going to get an idea now. Let me find my. I had a notes. I made some notes. Yes, I write notes down in cursive in ink because I am old school. Also relatively old, but I'm more old school. Okay, so what's gonna happen? How did this audience survey inform my how will this audience survey inform what's going to happen on the channel going forward, especially in 2022? And before we get into that per se, I'm gonna tell you, I mean, yeah, as I mentioned in the first video of this year, the one where I presented the audience survey, I realized whilst I was scheduling this year's videos, because that's something I tend to do in December, so I just make a big list with all of the weeks in the year, and then I place titles that I'd like to cover. And I was looking at that, and I saw, and whenever ideas for videos are a dime a dozen, and I have a shit ton of them. And whenever something's really good, I write it on my list, and I like, oh, I hope I'm gonna get to do this. Whenever that doesn't happen in a particular year, that title gets moved on to the next year, and so on. So I was doing this I was scheduling for 2022, and then I looked at I had a list of indie games that I wanted to cover, and then I had a other much larger, longer list of old ideas that I've been moving from one year to the other for maybe 4 or 5 years already. And that made me realize something. And that made me realize something that has happened throughout the past year. I've become much more interested in looking back more than looking forward. And maybe it's an age thing. It could be an age thing. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm in perfect nostalgia, in the perfect nostalgia interval, and I've become much more interested in going back and either playing games I never got to play due to, well, not a variety of reasons, mostly because of being poor, or replaying the games from my past that I never got to finish because of, you know, in that case is because of whatever the fuck happened. And the thing is, most of these titles are RPGs, and RPGs take a long ass time to play, which I don't mind. I love, especially if it's a title I really enjoy. And I'm happy to see that a lot of the respondents are interested in deep dives like this, in deep dives in is it a classic, and in me basically mining through my gaming history. And this is a lot that's gonna happen. This is one of the main things that's gonna happen on the channel going forward. This isn't a put down of indie games coming up. I'll still cover some of those, but I'll be considerably more selective when it comes to the titles that I'll be covering. The indie games that I'll mostly cover will in general be most likely city builders, because new city builders are generally insanely interesting, just because of the technology, and it allows people to do a lot more with a lot less people than it did back then. But yeah, a lot of my content is gonna be me playing older shit, let's say. It's gonna be either older shit that I never got around to play when it was released, or shit that I, for whatever reason, I was hindered from finishing, satisfyingly finishing at their time. And the one title that always comes to mind when I think this is Drakensang. Drakensang is an RPG that is made, whose source system is the what is it called? Evil Eye, Black Eye, something like that. It's a tabletop RPG system from Germany. Fairly complex but nice. And I played that game twice, and both times my hard drives died and I could not salvage shit. So that's one. Whenever I think about stuff from my past that I never got around to giving it its full chance, Drakensang is always top of the list. So I'm just thinking it would be really cool now to finally play the game and finish the game and cover the game. And we'll see if it's a classic. I don't know if it's necessarily a classic. It's definitely, for me, it is a subjective classic, because like I said, I played it a lot, even if I've never finished it, apparently. So yeah, that's one of the things that my channel will move towards. Basically doing deep dives into older games. And you can consider it a classic, a sort of a deep dive. If you think about it, it's from a certain perspective, a more overall sort of overview perspective, but they kind of are deep dives. But I also want the deep dives to tend to have a particular sort of focus going forward, and that focus will depend on the game and on what I think about the game. So yeah, look forward to older RPGs especially, although there's gonna be some strategy and city builders thrown in there, because there's a bunch of old shit that I never got around to, again, for reason of no finances. So yeah, things like I'm just thinking things like Drakensang, the Neverwinter Nights. Again, I played both those games. Never got around to finish any of them, so that'll be cool to finally get to finish. And trust me, there's a bunch more where those came from. So that's gonna be one of the focuses on my channel going forward. Basically deep dives into older games. The other thing, another thing that has also changed, and this is a bit of a more recent change, but I think it's been a long while coming. Just like this interest of mine into my gaming history, into, you know, like the things I played or didn't play at the time, it also took me back even farther than, let's say, farther than my teenage years. It took me back to my childhood, when accessibility of devices was almost non-existent. Even if you would have had the money, which my parents obviously didn't, but even if you would have had the money, it would have been extremely difficult to gain access to gaming devices. And I've this is kind of linked to me also being interested in starting to build myself a physical library of games. Now I have a fair bit of digital games, and I'll generally still continue getting digital games, especially from GOG, because they make them work on Windows 10. But I also would like to have a physical manifestation, a physical representation of games I played in the past and games that interested me. And I'm gonna make, and I will make some videos about that, but those will be like either thrifting sort of videos like LGR does, or something just like haul videos, like I just got a bunch of games, I'm gonna wait till I get a certain amount of games, and then I'm just gonna show you what I got and talk a bit about them and that sort of stuff. I really got much more interested in the vintage sort of aspect of gaming. Not necessarily PC gaming, although that would also be great. However, I literally don't have the space for a vintage PC to set it up and shit. That would be great, but that's not gonna happen. And actually, yeah, those things are a couple of titles that I actually just got secondhand, and I'm gonna talk about them when I get a bit more, so that I can make a longer video about what I got. Me starting to build a physical games library, not necessarily to use them, because again, I don't even have a fucking CD drive, but I just would like to have a physical manifestation of them. Because in the olden times, people would generally have a library of books, which that's also fine. I have some of those as well. But games were much more important to my development than books were. Although you could argue that books were kind of important as well. But games have been a much larger, left a much larger footprint in my life than books have. Let's just leave it at that. So yeah, another focus, not necessarily a focus, another type of content that I will be engaging with will be, and depending on possibilities, like thrifting sort of videos or just haul videos about games, and also maybe other stuff, because some of the things that, one thing that is an intrinsic part of my childhood is, again, this inability and lack of capacity of, or an opportunity of getting any sort of gaming device, with the exception of the well-known NES Famicom clone from Eastern Europe known as the Terminator 2. With the exception of that. And I will be looking for, actually, I will be also looking for handhelds. Like I've wanted way back when. I would have loved the Game Boy. Never ever had one. Now I might be able to afford one. And likewise, I am interested. I'm in the market to get either a PS1 or a PS2 Slim, so that I can play PS1 and PS2 games. Because there are a couple of PlayStation games that I would like to try on their time appropriate device. Sure, there's emulation. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I'd much rather, if you can experience, now going back to the books, if you can experience a book in its native language, way better than any translation. So likewise, if I can experience a video game in its native format, I believe it's going to be way better, or at least much more authentic to what the developers aimed, if I experience it on the particular tech that it was built for. Yeah. Do I have anything else? Yeah, no. So yeah, that's kind of what's coming for the channel. Unfortunately, this does mean there's gonna be less indies, and I'm sorry for the people who preferred me covering new titles. There's still gonna be some of those again, but less so, because I'll want to focus my time and energy on all of these older things that I never really got to play at their time. So that's gonna be a major part of it, and then I'm gonna also make these sort of videos. I'm gonna try to see if I can if I find interesting thrift stores in which I can shoot. I know there are a couple around here, and my buddy Randolph has a car, so we might do some collabs related to that soon. It depends on some other factors, some other external factors. But yeah, I kind of want to do that as well, because I've been watching a lot, and this is why I said this might seem like it's abrupt to some of you, but I think for me this has been a long time coming, because I've been watching videos about vintage and retro computing for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And a couple of years ago, I sort of got re-interested in the Spectrum ZX, which was my first ever machine. Actually, some of my first memories are related to the Spectrum ZX, to gaming, so that right there. And I've been watching a lot of those. I've still been watching those and emulation stuff, and I'm interested. I'm interested in making a retro Pi stuff and things like that. But if I can sort of afford to get and can actually get the time appropriate tech, that would be even better, I think. The real problem I have is well, money. Fair enough, but thanks to my patrons, I have a certain amount of funds which I can now shift into this sort of interest, because let's face it, upgrading the computer is not going to happen due to the chip shortage. Everything still works fairly fine, and considering I'm not playing anything that's super new or super crazy 3D wise, I should still do fairly well with my current video card. And even though I kind of plan on upgrading my mic setup, I might postpone that in favor of me getting a bunch of old games and tech. But yeah, that one's that's gonna be interesting to see what actually comes of it. Now, immediate plans. Running games from floppy disks. Yeah, that. I think that would be a bit. Yeah, that's a bit. I did that as well, But again, I don't have I don't have space for a vintage computer. I would love to have I would love to, in that same vein, I would love to rebuild close to what I had, which was a 586DX4, an AMD 586DX4. Or maybe not exactly that particular one, because just having a Pentium processor helped with other shit like Winamp, for instance. You might not know this, but the oldest Winamp, which you might not know what Winamp is, but whatever, the oldest Winamp versions required Pentium architecture in order to work. Even if you had the power to do it, even if you had the processor the processor speed and RAM, it needed Pentium infrastructure to work properly. Anyway, so what's coming up? February is actually gonna have an upload a week, because since I took an entire month off, more or less, I'm gonna need to like push it a bit. I'm gonna need to tell the AI, basically, to tell the AI, yes, Winamp is definitely a classic, to tell the AI that the channel is back and running on all cylinders. So February is actually gonna have one upload a week, and 2 of those uploads are gonna be the upcoming CRPG and City Builder lists for 2022. So make sure you check those out. Really interesting titles. And also the thing I do is that I also offer updates on some of the titles from my past lists. So you'll get to find out quickly, because I did all of the research. You'll get to know if an older title is out or not, or in which situation it is. So 2 of those will be the lists, and I'll leave the other 2 for you to find out, basically. And after that, from March onwards, it's probably gonna be 1 video every 2 weeks, more or less, maybe even 3, depending on time, how much time it takes. And expect a much more a different sort of is gonna be. I'm gonna talk about games. Still gonna talk about games, but I'm also gonna do some other special stuff. Special stuff in terms of what I cover, but also and how I cover it. We'll see. But yes, I do have a video that I think will appeal a lot to the Central and East Europeans who watch me, especially East Europeans, since that this is it's something that is very specific to where I come from. But yeah, I am kinda sort of hoarse. Not that type of horse, because of all the talking, and I'm open for questions. If there's anyone out there who has specific questions about what's coming up or what I just said, this is a good time to let them rip, whilst I take a drink of water and blow my nose. I don't know, whenever I talk a lot, my nose gets stuffy. I don't know what it is. I need to look it up. But write your questions if you have any. If not, I'll just blow my nose, and then we can then we'll wrap up. Text games, not necessarily. You're talking about like Zork and shit? No, not necessarily text games. I do love interactive narrative games, which imply a lot of reading, but text games per se, no. My general interests tend to focus around from the mid 90s up to the mid 2000s. Well, 90s in general, up to the mid 2000s. That's when most of the stuff, because I got a period appropriate computer in 2004. So from 2004 onward, I could play basically everything that was released. Up until 2004, I could never play what was just released. So that's kind of like 1990 something to 2004. So the 90s and mid 2000 up until the mid 2000 is most of this area of interest to me, as well as some later stuff that, again, like I said earlier, I did play for whatever distant amount of time, but didn't get to finish it. So no, text adventures or text games per se, not necessarily. No, I'm the things I'm thinking about are very RPGs. Although I did play mods. I did play a mod that I enjoyed, but again, I played the mod because I also couldn't run games because I didn't have strong computers. So yeah, necessity teaches one a lot. Well, yeah, so I told you what's coming up in February, blah blah blah. Yeah, there's gonna be some interesting stuff. I hope you'll find what I have planned. Like, I have a couple of very special videos planned for this year, and some of them are really old. Some ideas, like I have one video that I wrote 4 years ago, I think, or maybe 6 or maybe 5. Was it 6? Was it 2016? It might have been 2016 when I wrote it initially. So I have a video that I've been lugging with me since about 2016 or 17, which I might get to make this year. So yeah, I have a really long backlog of old stuff that of old ideas that I wanna do. Not to mention the old stuff I wanna cover. Yeah, let's hope it's gonna be an interesting year in this sense, Michal. Not an interesting year in the sense of how the past 2 years have been interesting, global wise. But yeah, that's about it from me. Thank you very much for watching. I will cut this video down and post it as a separate video on the channel for those who might want to check it out later and who didn't have time or weren't aware of the stream, because that, again, since not a lot of people check out the streams, they might not be into it. And the entire stream I'll move to my stream channel. But yeah, stick around. Next week, most likely Monday, the top upcoming CRPG video games for 2022 is coming up. And yeah, just do your best if you can to help my channel grow. So whenever you see a new video, just pop it up, check it out, like it, and ideally, like I say at the end, feed the algorithm and comment something that's also relevant. Maybe if it's relevant, it's good, it's better. And also share it with like-minded humans if you know any. But yeah, that's been about it for me for today. Oh, you'll also notice that I did a slight amount of rebranding. If you look on my channel banner, it's a bit different, and my Twitter page as well, just to better reflect what's gonna happen this year. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I've been StefaNonsense. You have a great rest of your day, and hopefully you'll see me soon.